Hey there, super friends. It's Joey with Last Point Gaming. Today is Friday, February 25th, 2022. How y'all doing? I know it's been a while. Somebody placed a pox upon my house. My whole house got COVID. And this episode I've actually tried to record. This is probably like the 8th attempt. It was like 3 times last week and the week before. And then this is my second attempt this week. Because it always devolves into ranting about the American government and capitalism. And it's not what I'm trying to do here. So we're going to try again. We're talking about magic, of course, which is why it's just like a bitch fest. But I'm gonna try to say some positive things. But let's get into it, I guess. First and foremost, fuck Seb McKinnon. I distinctly recall asking you to not turn out to be a douchebag about 2 years ago. You failed me, dude. You failed me hard. If you're not aware about what's going on there, I suggest you Google it, because this is one of those things, if I try to talk about it at all, it will very quickly devolve. And he's not even American. He's in Canada. I guess that makes him North American. I don't know. It's always weird to me that we call ourselves Americans here in the United States, but like, what else are we gonna call ourselves? I don't know. Anyway, it's also been a very, very long 2 weeks at work. But hey, I know View now, so that's cool. So I'm a little extra burnout. So yeah, this should be interesting. But yeah, fuck Seb. Moving right along. SCG fired like all my favorite writers. Yesterday was the last airing of Versus Live. They seem to be drastically pivoting their content direction. And that in and of itself, I mean, businesses got to make choices or whatever, and fine. You know, like, I would definitely feel for the displaced writers, especially because I'm assuming they were on like a per article contract. Not like, oh, you bill for the hours it takes you to write the article, but here's my article, cool, here's your X amount of dollars. So they can't really collect unemployment on that. So, but it seems like they were given a lot of notice. I mean, as far as these things go, being that most employers, you're lucky if you get 2 weeks out of them. When you're being left to go for something that, you know, you can't control. But what I'm annoyed about is in the article they put out about this. So if you're not aware somehow, like if you haven't read this article and you don't follow Cedric on Twitter, back, I don't know if it was like early January, like early this year or late last year, it was a couple months ago, I guess, out of time, what even is it? Cedric announced that he was parting ways with SCG, and he did it in like a really diplomatic way, you know, time for me to move on kind of thing, so long and thanks for all the fish, like, just moving on. There was no like, fuck you, I'm out, there no like, shit talking, like, just very diplomatic, I'm no longer working with SCG. Okay. But in this article, they talk about how, like, the content department's been struggling for the last 2 years, though I would think if anything was bringing in revenue, that probably had to be, like, the only thing. And then Cedric quit, and so it was insurmountable. So it, like, really seems to shift the, like, if you're mad about this, don't blame us. Blame him. And, yo, if the man was so integral to your operation, why the fuck did you let him leave? Now, it's possible that Cedric was offered an opportunity that he felt he would get a better return on his time investment, and SCG couldn't possibly meet this other offer. That's possible. It's possible he could have come to the conclusion he's got one hustle too many, and this is the least effective return on the time investment. But again, why didn't you pay him more then? Or it could have been just like, this is not a job I can do anymore, but then why wasn't he supported more in the role? Like, generally when somebody leaves a company, it's because of things within that company, right? Either they're not being paid what they feel their worth in the market is, usually determined by somebody else offering them more money to do the same thing, or they're focus, or like their work environment is not supportive or is in fact toxic. Like, there's always a reason, right? And the thing is like I said, he was real diplomatic about it. He didn't fault them in any way. So for them to kind of pass this back onto him, I don't know, it feels gross. It feels like scapegoating. Also, now this is 100% complete speculation. I do not personally know Cedric Phillips. I know nobody in the inner workings of SCG or anything like that. I have no insider information. This is just pure speculation. I kind of wonder if the causation isn't backwards here. That it's not, oh, Cedric left, so fuck it, I guess we're out of content because we can't do it. And I kind of wonder if they told him the direction they were planning on going, and Cedric was like, yeah, that's not something I want to be a part of. But again, 100% speculation. Do not take this as truth. This is just my ponderings while I've been going through this over and over and over again. Like, we already knew that they weren't planning on bringing coverage back, and we saw this because at the SCG Con in Roanoke, like on their turf, there's no shipping of equipment or anything like that. Like, they may have had to transport it across town, depending on, you know, how far away the store was from the venue that they did this con at. But the one back in October, there was no coverage. You know, first major event since things got canceled due to the pandemic, and there was no coverage. So, I don't know, that seemed to send a pretty clear message that coverage wasn't a thing they were doing anymore, because out of all of their upcoming stops, that would have been the easiest for them to implement, right? Because again, on their turf. I suppose it is possible that the venue said that they couldn't. I really have no concept of how big a city Roanoke is. Because in my mind, Roanoke consists of the SCG store and HQ, 2 different apartment buildings, because I have watched players from SCG stream and talk about, you know, coming over to this other person's apartment building. 2 houses, and that is the Andersons' old house, which they're, you know, renting to a couple of the guys from SCG, and the house that they bought when they moved back. And I suppose there's got to be 2 more houses there, because I think Brad and Corey both bought houses there. I don't know. Brad may be in an apartment. I'm going to guess it's a house because he has a lab. Or some sort of retriever. I think he may have the golden retriever. I don't know. I get his and Corey's dogs confused. I don't remember the humans, just the dogs. So that's it. That's Roanoke. Oh, and the couple food places that have been mentioned by, personalities from SCG that I follow. That's it. That's what Roanoke, Virginia is. And I know that can't be true, right? So, yeah, I don't have a concept, I live right outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's the capital of the state, but it is probably, one of the smallest cities, if not the smallest city, as opposed to, town, village, municipality, whatever. So that's my concept of city, and it's tiny. I've gone to Lancaster, Pennsylvania on occasion, and I hate that place because it is a bigger city, and I can barely handle Harrisburg. I have gone to, Philadelphia proper once. I took an Amtrak out, and then I was fortunate that the place I was going was very close to the SEPTA route there. They have, an underground train, subway system, I guess. Kind of like New York, but not as extensive. And, I was in Pittsburgh when I was a real little kid. We rode one of the cable cars. My dad's originally from out that way. And his, I think his uncle died, maybe, and we went to the funeral. I don't know. I was pretty young. So, I don't know if Roanoke is, a Harrisburg-sized city or, a Lancaster-sized city, which is only, a mid-sized city, or, a Philadelphia-sized city. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know how I got here, so I'm just gonna try to move along. So yeah, they already made it pretty clear that they were looking to abandon coverage. Okay. And I kind of feel like they may have been planning this pivot in content offering for a bit. So it looks like they're going to focus more on not tournament sanctioned formats. I don't want to call them casual. I know a lot of people call it casual, but I have met Commander players. They are not casual. They're not. I've seen Commander games get more heated than heated tournament games at an open. It's weird. But yeah, they're focusing more on Commander and Cube. Okay. Again, they got to make the decisions that's best for their company and everything. So it's not that I'm oh, you're pivoting to content I don't care about, so I'm mad at you. I mean, yeah, I went and canceled my premium subscription as soon as the news dropped, because the only reason I had a premium subscription was to support the content creation, and get to read the articles I wanted to read as soon as they went live. I don't order things from SCG. I try to buy as much as I can from my LGS to support them. I do buy BCW sleeves, but I buy them directly from BCW because my LGS doesn't carry them, and at this point they are definitely my favorite sleeves. They hold up pretty well, and they're not stabby. Dragon Shields are really high quality sleeves, however the corners are very firm and very stabby. And when I get overwhelmed and start kind of hitting sensory overload, the stabby corners are just a bridge too fucking far. I also feel katanas are highly overrated. I'm not saying that I think they're bad, I just don't think they're as amazing as people claim. That's not me being churlish and taking shots at SCG. I think katanas are fine sleeves. I don't think they're amazing sleeves. I do, however, frequently think on this and find it kind of weird that, like, this is a topic of, like, sleeve quality. It's so weird to me. Like, back in the day, right, we used to play bareback. Like, we didn't play with sleeves. They weren't a thing. And then they became a thing, and we were all like, okay, yeah, this is, like, the silliest shit ever. They make the deck so much harder to shuffle, and this feels weird, and I don't like it. And now, when I went over to Epidemic's place a few weeks ago, him and I each had MH2 pre-release kits that we had bought back around the MH2 pre-release, and we're like, yeah, we'll get together and battle sometime. Months and months later, we finally did. And I didn't think to bring sleeves with me. He didn't mention sleeves, so we played bareback, and it now feels weird. I don't like it. Anyway, and if I do have to buy singles online because, like, the shop doesn't have them, I go to TCG Player. Now, yes, you can almost always find what you're looking for cheaper on TCG Player. However, it actually really makes sense. TCG Player is like a marketplace, almost like in an MMORPG, like the broker system. Like, yeah, you have to have a store. Not just anybody can go list singles on TCG, but I don't really know how much work it is to set up a store. It may not be that much. But smaller sellers are always underbidding the bigger sellers to move their product faster. Whereas SCG is more like going to one of the NPC vendors where the prices are what the prices are. And yeah, they adjust them and everything, but they can't adjust them in real time to possibly keep up with TCG. You just can't. I mean, maybe if they had like a data sniffer, or if TCG offered some kind of API that they could pull the data in from and automatically update their prices, but that is just dangerous on a whole other level for a bunch of other reasons. It's not something I would recommend they do. So, yeah, no, it makes sense that you can generally find what you're looking for cheaper on TCG Player, because, again, it's this marketplace, and people are constantly listing things, and, you know, if their major goal is to move the product as opposed to maximize on their profit per card, they will sell them lower than anybody else selling. So, without the articles that, like, I care to read, no, I don't care about Commander, and Cube, like, really baffles me. I don't get the appeal. Please don't try to explain it to me. Many have. It's not for me. That's fine. It doesn't have to be for me. You can totally enjoy doing cube drafting. You can enjoy Commander. Just because these things are not my bag doesn't mean that I think that they don't deserve to exist or anything along those lines. But because this is not content I care about, I'm not going to subscribe to it. It's, I don't know, too often when, like, there was a thread Todd Anderson had started on Twitter about just the absolutely bad economy on Arena. Arena is marketed as a free-to-play game that's really not, and actually gets very expensive to play at an enjoyable level. Yes, you can technically play on Arena and never give them a dime. But is it going to be an enjoyable experience? For me, no. And the problem is, because they don't have any kind of system for converting dead cards in your collection, you know, dead to you at least, into things you want, you have to keep dumping money into it. Unless you, like, dump enough to build a historic deck that you like, and that's the deck you play, and you hope that it never gets banned. But personally, I absolutely hate, hate the historic format. Like, I loathe it. Everybody's been talking about, like, well, what if instead of doing historic, they just put Pioneer on Arena? And seeing what they've done with historic, I don't like that idea. Because I like the idea of the Pioneer format. And maybe they wouldn't have had to take the same approach if they had just put Pioneer in. But when historic was introduced, it had the same problem. I don't know if y'all remember that Frontier format that was bopping along for a second, maybe like 6-7 years ago. It was a while. Sorry. I am not sick. It's just, I was sick, and I've been smoking for 20 years, so that cough's gonna linger. Anyway. So, yeah. What was I talking about? Hold on a sec. Okay. No. Yeah. Alright, I got it. Frontier. It was not a format introduced by WotC. It was one of those rogue formats somebody else came up with. I want to say it was TCG Player, like one of their writers. Because, yeah, since Modern got kind of too deep, that the price barrier to entry is just too high, people have been trying to figure out a way to make Rotatos valuable, right? So they tried introducing Frontier, and the problem with Frontier is it wasn't deep enough to feel like its own format. It felt almost like the old standard extended format, which by and large was not well loved. Now, granted, the old standard extended format used to continue to rotate. So now, you know, at the sets that were getting ready to rotate, stuff was just more expensive because they were further out of print. And your ability to recoup your investment once it was rotated from the format was still kind of shit. So that played, I think, a lot into... I didn't really play organized at all back when standard extended was a thing. But that could explain a lot of why it wasn't well received, but I don't think a lot of people's memories are capable of that kind of nuance. And so you look at this format that kind of feels the same, and you're like, bad, this is just like extended, nobody liked that. It just wasn't deep enough to feel like it was a big difference from standard. Like, it was standard heavy or modern light. Like, it didn't feel like its own thing, right? And I think that's the same problem they had with historic, which seems like they introduced it solely to get out of coming up with a system for players to dust cards. I gotta pause y'all real quick. Yeah, so historic, I'm pretty sure, was solely introduced because rotation was coming up, and they were like, players gonna riot when they're like, so let me get this straight, I put all this money into building a collection that I can't get out of here, and, you know, can't really do anything with. And now rotation happened, and half of this collection that, again, I can't really convert into anything is now worthless. Like, absolutely, I can't even play with it, right? So it really felt like as rotation was kind of pending, like, you know, getting closer and closer, that was a big topic of discussion. Like, well, what's Arena gonna do? Because these Rotatos just sit there mocking you. And then they announced historic, like, shortly, very, very shortly before the rotation was scheduled to occur. So I don't think they were really thinking that far ahead. And again, you had the same problem where Historic did not feel like a format in and of itself. It felt like this old extended format. And people only remember the history of extended really wasn't well received. So what do? Add a bunch of crap into it to, give it more depth and separate it more from standard. And now it's like random dot format. I absolutely hate playing it. Because the couple times I have, I'm like, okay, this will be fine. And I get to play, like, these cards that rotated that I liked and everything. So, sure, let's give it a try. And then, like, your opponent plays, Phyrexian face shredder bullshit that you're like, I didn't even know that this was a card. Like, I've never heard of this Magic card before. And, let me pause y'all again real quick. Okay. So, yeah, as I was saying. There's a bunch of, like, random bullshit in this format, and it ticks me off every fucking time. And in fact, it was kind of a meme on, I don't know if I use that word correctly, but I don't care. That's what we're doing today. But on Versus Live, when they were shuffling and, like, had dead air, that was, like, just one of the things they did. They're like, let's play. Is it in Historic or not? And people in the chat would shout out random cards, and Ross and Corey would guess whether it is a card that is legal in the Historic format. And, I mean, Ross has, like, an encyclopedic knowledge of Magic cards. Not necessarily names of cards. I don't know, though. He's pretty good about it. I'm also really bad with card names. And Corey seems to have a very deep knowledge of the game. And they both still... if I had to guess, based off of no data whatsoever, except for happen to be hanging out in Versus Live, listening to this, their accuracy was only like 50%. Because it's just like random shit that makes no sense. There's no like, okay, we decided to add this one old set. Or even just the rares from this one old set. No. It is completely made up and random. And that bugs me. Now again, if you like Historic, cool. Like, these are just my personal problems with Historic. Some people like that randomness. Or, being on either side of it. Some people enjoy seeing the random shit that falls out of their opponent's deck, and some people enjoy being the person playing this random obscure card that, like, nobody's heard of. But Arena demands a lot of money to just kind of continuously be dumped into it for you to get to play at, I don't even want to say competitive level, but like really actually get to play games of Magic and not just sit there and get your face beaten. And I mean, if that's your kink, cool. You are lucky you get to play Arena for free. The rest of us, not so much. So anyway, Todd started a thread on this, and I commented that, like, that was the thing, is you have to continuously put money into this. And not just, like, a little bit. I think the pack of gems you can buy for $20 gets you 2 drafts. Now, well, 2 the, like, against other people drafts. So you do get a little more time out of that because, oh my god, it takes so long to draft against other people. And there's always, like, one person in the pod that's, like, the bottleneck where all the packs get hung up. I generally assume that they're a streamer and they're going through, like, all the decision trees over whether we take this card or that card or whatever. But it could just be that their connection's not great or their computer's not great or whatever. I don't judge, but it is annoying on my end. So, yeah. Now, you can win enough from a draft to get to draft again, if you're good at it. But Magic is inherently a game of variance. So, I don't know. It just feels bad when you scrub out of a ladder with a solid deck because you got just not great draws, or didn't draw the removal spell the 17 turns you had an opportunity to draw the removal spell before this creature became a problem, or, you know, whatever. And maybe I'm just trying to make excuses for my bad draft play. But it just seems like I have to put way too much money in for the enjoyment I get out of it. And I commented basically as much, you know, simplified version to fit in a tweet, and Todd's response was, right, so why are we doing this? And I replied, I was like, well, see, I'm not. I don't play Arena anymore because I came to this conclusion that I am just not getting the time out of the monetary investment of enjoyment out of this game. Not to mention, pretty much every time I play Arena, I get pissed off, so. It's not that, like, I can't take losing. Yo, I only play decks that amuse me, so I lose a lot. I am playing Enchantress in Modern right now. It is not a good deck. I do not recommend if your joy in the game is winning games of Magic, because you ain't gonna. Most of the games I lose, I am one turn behind. That if I had one more turn, I could stabilize. So, even though I lost, I got to play the game. I got to interact. I got to do things. I didn't just sit there and get knocked around by my opponent. It's not that I mind losing. It's just, it really feels like the variance is exacerbated in Arena. Like, here I am with my 2-color draft deck, can't get my second color online by turn 10, whereas my opponent's playing a 5-color pile and has all 5 colors online turn 4. Like, what the fuck? How does that work? And yes, I play best of 1, which brings in the Arena manipulation. There are reasons I play best of 1. It feels much less bad to have to concede out of a game that I'm ahead in when it's one game, because, like, something came up and I gotta go deal with it, than it does to concede out of game 1 of best of 3 and concede a match. Right? So that's why I play best of 1. I have 3 kids at home, one of which is a toddler. I also have a dog that is sweet as pie, but she's not very bright. And a cat that I guess she would be considered juvenile now, so not quite far enough away from the kitten stage to not be getting herself in trouble all the time. So there's a lot going on in my house. But Arena does the thing where it apparently generates 2 hands and it decides which one's best. Okay. In best of 1, they either need to give you a free mulligan, or in lieu of that, if they're going to do this 2-hand nonsense, let the player pick which of the 2 hands they want. Because if I'm playing a 2-color deck, and there is a hand with 2 lands in it, but it's 1 of each color, and at least 1 playable card, I will take that over the hand of 3 lands of 1 color, and more playables in that particular hand. Because I know me, and I'm going to draw every card of the other color and never draw a mana source for it. So, every other best of 1 format has a free mulligan, because you're only playing 1 game. So I think Arena needs to implement that. And as far as the shuffler's not broken, it's just that it's truly random, and most people when shuffling are not truly random. Sure. But whatever the cause, it leads to more non-games than I generally play in paper. If I have as many non-games in a night at F&M as I do on a given day on Arena, I changed my sleeves because it means my sleeves are getting gunked up and cards are sticking together. And I'm not able to effectively shuffle it. So, yeah, I'm like, I don't, because I didn't feel I was getting my enjoyment out of the monetary investment, that compensates for the monetary investment. And somebody replied to me, and I don't know if they were like replying really to Todd's posing the question of, well, then why do we keep playing the crooked game? Or if it was to my response of, yeah, I don't. But they were like, well, I don't think a boycott would be effective, and I get enjoyment. Look, if you feel that the enjoyment you get out of Arena is worth the money you put into it and you want to play it, go ahead. I'm not trying to get anybody to boycott it. That's not what I'm doing. I'm expressing that my evaluation of what I put into it versus what I get out of it is that I get kind of screwed by it, so I just don't. But to, sure, go ahead and present your point of view of, oh, well, I actually feel like I do get the enjoyment out of it. I'm good at drafting, so I get to kind of infinite for a little bit. $20 gets me 10 drafts instead of 2. Okay, cool. Sure, sucks to suck, got it. But don't tell me to not voice my opinion on it. I especially when I'm on a thread of people sharing their criticisms of Arena, don't tell me to not criticize. And I don't know that was this person's intent when they replied to me. But it really felt like invalidating, kind of well, I disagree with you, and so I think people should play Arena. No, we're presenting the problems we see with Arena. You're saying that's not a problem for you. Okay, fine. But we're basically commiserating, and if other people are seeing the same problems, validating their perception of it. I mean, ultimately, you do what makes you happy that is not hurtful or harmful to somebody else. And that's where it's at. It's I try not to go on threads where people are talking about being excited about some the neon cards from Neon Dynasty. Personally, I am fed up with there being 80 versions of every fucking card in the set. I find that shit incredibly annoying, personally. And I'll express that opinion, freely in my own spaces or in spaces where other people are also bitching about it. Again, I will commiserate. But I try not to go in threads where people are like, oh, check out how sick this secret lair whatever looks, and be like, it's just price gouging, or, express negatives. They're excited about it, cool. Let them be excited about it. Yes, I do feel like people need to let other people like things, and disliking things is not a winning personality. It doesn't make you cool or edgy. It generally just makes you kind of annoying when you can't let anybody else like it. When I was 21, I worked at Borders. I distinctly remember, because I only worked there for about a year. Avril Lavigne came out with a new album, and I love Avril Lavigne. She's like an angry little bunny, and she's great. Actually, I've come to find that I really enjoy the band Paramore as well, who seem to take some inspiration from Avril. But anyway, so I bought this CD because it was the day it came out, and we sold CDs. And I'm getting ready to leave for the day with my friend. We're, wrapping up our mid shifts. We're gonna go like hang out at the diner or whatever, and I buy the CD. The pod of friends I hung around with at that point were all like really into Tool. Like, you know what I'm talking about. If you have ever met a quote-unquote true Tool fan, you know what I'm talking about. It's almost like a cult-like mentality. And Maynard is their god. I think Tool's a fine band. Undertow was a pretty good album. Lateralis, I think, was a decent album. I think Schism's actually a pretty good song. It just got way overplayed. Like, to the point where nobody wanted to hear that song again. But I think, like, it's actually a good song. So, yeah, I appreciate some of their music. I'm not what you would call a fan, though. Not in this context. And so, you know, a bunch of us went and were hanging out at the diner, and she brought up, she's like, yeah, so Joey bought the new Avril Lavigne CD today. God, that tells you how old I am. When I was 21, we were still buying fucking CDs. I was excited because my car had a native CD player instead of having to take my little Discman and put the cassette tape transmitter thingy in the cassette tape slot and constantly have to put batteries in the stupid fucking Discman. Who, no matter how good the anti-skip technology on this thing was, it could not compete with Pennsylvania roads. Right? Yeah, okay, I'm old. But she was like, she joked about it, and like that became a thing the rest of the time we were hanging out. Is they're like, I can't believe you. I'm like, look, I'm not making y'all listen to Avril Lavigne. I like her, and that's cool. I can like her. You don't have to, but like, yo, what the fuck? And it's a really shit feeling. You know, I think as Magic players, especially if you're like an elder millennial, is what they call us. I like being an elder. Gives an air that I know what the fuck I'm doing when generally I'm cosplaying as a full and complete human being. Like, when you played Magic back in the 90s, people did the same thing. They were like, wow, something wrong with you. But if you had a hard-on for Quake, that was cool. Like, what the fuck? Just let people like things they want to like. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can't criticize things. Just do it in your own space. Do not go into the spaces of people talking about how excited they are about something just to shit on it. To make yourself feel superior, I guess. I don't know the point of this. And like, yeah, sure. I've done it. Where like, it comes across my feed where somebody's like, oh wow, this is so cool. And I'm like, oh my god. Why is there like a 7th version of this card in this set? Why? But I do generally try to stay aware of it and not do that. Nobody's perfect. We all fuck up. It's the pursuit of perfection. Like, don't let perfection get in the way of good. So yeah, I don't like Arena. That's the crux of that. I don't know. I guess that's a kind of like decent segue into the last thing I want to talk about. So of course we got Twitter drama in the Magic community because there's always Twitter drama in the Magic community. I'm pretty sure there is Twitter drama in every Twitter community because that's just how Twitter works. Well, we got 240 characters, 280, something like that. It's the length of tweets, and it is just not conducive to productive discussion and like productive dialogue. It's just not the place for it, but we try to anyway. I do it too. I don't even understand the appeal, and I do it. It's whatever. But anyway, so yeah, we got Twitter drama that seems to largely stem from a large content creator retweeted a very small creator, kind of aggressively disagreeing with their opinion, and then this large content creator's audience went to hassle this smaller content creator in their space. Okay. This keeps happening. And it will until we address certain things in the community. First and foremost, bad behavior is bad no matter who the target or aggressor is. So the amount of quote-unquote good guy or good person content creators I have seen that got some real fucking Hambly energy going on, but they're expressing this aggressive criticism to somebody who is less like than them. Either because they are an unknown, like they have a very small following, and so the majority of the people following the larger creator just don't know who they are, and so automatically like the larger creator more, or somebody who has expressed opinions that the general consensus is against. Like, my opinion here is one that does not seem to be generally well received. It's not about right and wrong and good and bad when the morality is subjective based on who the participants are. So, like, people who went at Hambly, talking about how it's so wrong that he body shames people, but then also called him a fat neckbeard. Who talked about how it's so wrong the way he talked about women, but then talked the same kind of shit on his wife, who, like, really isn't a person in the community, like, isn't a known person, right? Insulting him as a person and going at him as a person instead of, like, I will grant the Professor and Wedge, I don't really follow either of them too closely. I think I might follow the Professor on Twitter because he shows up in my feed a lot. I don't follow Wedge. I have watched some of their content. I can't listen to the Professor speak. And that's not me taking a shot at him or anything. I'm not saying he's bad at it. It's my auditory processing. Like, I have a sensitivity when it comes to auditory processing, and there are certain people, I don't care how much, like, I want to hear what they have to say, I can't listen to it. Like, I can't engage with it. Brain just hears Charlie Brown adults. Wah, wah, wah. Like, can't get there. Wedge's content just really wasn't stuff I was into. Anyway, during that whole situation, they consistently criticized his behavior and his actions. They consistently criticized things he did. They never once that I saw took a personal shot at him. They didn't attack him as a person. They attacked his behavior. And there is a world of difference between these two things. So when you're calling him out and taking him to task on this bad behavior, but in the same breath engaging in the same behavior, again, it's not about good or bad or right or wrong or anything like that. It's about who is liked and who is not, and that's kind of bullshit. Like, yes, there are people more at risk for being targeted by certain kinds of behavior. In general, women in the magic space are more at risk for sexual harassment and, like, inappropriate comments and touching and that kind of shit, right? But that doesn't mean that it can't happen to, like, a cis-het white guy. If, like, Tannen and I are kind of friendly. If I would walk up to him at a tournament, right, and, you know, go to say hi or whatever, and make an inappropriate comment to him, it is not okay just because he's a cis white guy that is generally presumed hetero because he's married to a woman. I'm putting that out there because I, as somebody who is perceived as a cis woman, there's some questioning going on right now. We'll get back to you on that one. Am married to a cis white guy. there's also the perception that that means I'm heterosexual, and I'm not. So I'm just putting that out there. It's not because I know something you don't know or anything like that. I just think we need to stop assuming hetero is the default. But anyway, we'll stick with he is a cis white guy. It's not any less inappropriate for me to make vulgar comments to him than it would be for him to make them to me, right? It's still not okay. It's not acceptable behavior and shouldn't be. But I feel like this community, in an attempt to kind of elevate the marginalized identities in the community and the marginalized statuses, kind of turn a blind eye when the bad behavior is perpetrated by somebody from a marginalized status, or when the target is not somebody that is part of a marginalized status, a marginalized community. And that's problematic. Because it still feeds into this idea of the morality is subjective. So yeah, large content creator dunks on a small content creator and people go have at this small content creator. Large content creator gets called out by another large content creator in, like, matching the energy. It was also very aggressive. And people are kind of in the position of, well, what's right and wrong here? And the fact of the matter is, like, expressing disagreement shouldn't be something that shouldn't be allowed. But larger content creators, I think, need to really have an active awareness of what it means to have that following. It was determined that Hambly deserved to be banned from the game for lifetime, right? Because, not because he physically harassed somebody, not because he went to an event and physically harassed Christine, but because he talked a lot of shit on the internet and he had a following of people who then piled on the harassment, and it was determined that he bore some responsibility for the actions of his followers. However, when it's a larger content creator that is more well-liked by the community, because, like, yeah, let's face it, Hambly was an edgelord, absolutely. He was like this bizarre amalgamation of Howard Stern and Alex Jones in the context of the Magic community. It was weird. I did follow him for a while. I'm not proud of it, but I'm also not going to hide it. Because, understand, when I showed up here in the larger Magic community and was like, so why do we all hate this guy? Nobody could really point to anything concrete. It was just like, well, we just hate him. And, like, he said this thing that was offensive. I'm like, okay, well, it looks like he apologized for it. Now, of course, I don't understand at this point that there is a history of him making the same mistake over and over again and then apologizing and expecting to be forgiven. Look, yeah, we all do fuck up. However, when you're making the same mistake over and over again, it's not a fuck up. It's not a mistake. It's intentional. And you expect that an apology just smooths it over. But again, I'm new here, so I don't understand really what's going on. Just, we hate this guy, and we hate everything he says. Like, he talks about poor card quality. God damn, Hambly's on it again. However, as soon as he gets banned out of the community, that's when the professor takes up talking about the shit card quality. Because, and I get it, you know, the professor depends on content creation as his source of income. He can't afford to have himself seen as aligned with Hambly in any way. So he's got to wait until that threat's removed from the environment to talk about the real issue. But that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Is, like, you can't concede, like, yeah, okay, the guy's kind of a shithead. However, this particular point, he's right. No, it's we hate him, so anything he says, he's Fox News. Anything Fox News says is a lie, even if it was true when they originally said it. As soon as they say it, it becomes a lie. It was a bit from Family Guy, I think. One of those. Like Family Guy, American Dad. It's one of those Seth MacFarlane shows. And, you know, as somebody who doesn't really know the lay of the land, I'm like, I don't understand why everybody hates him, and nobody can tell me, like, really give me a good answer. And because I'm even asking about it, instead of just accepting that we all hate this guy, I'm getting shit on by quote-unquote good people in the community. Because I had the audacity to ask for a reason why we shouldn't like this guy, instead of just accepting that the community in general doesn't like him, so I probably shouldn't. Now, I followed him for longer than I should. I made rationalizations longer than I should because I didn't want to admit that I was wrong, and I will own that. But I do contest that the reason I ended up there in the first place was because of this kind of shit, where there is no good and bad, right or wrong. It's all in how well liked is the person who engaged in the behavior versus how well liked is the person who was targeted by the behavior. Or how many clout points can you get for automatically siding against the person who engaged in the behavior because the person who was targeted by the behavior is part of a marginalized demographic and you're a cookie ally. Cookie allies are people that are only allies so long as they're getting praised for it. I believe this is my own term. It's like, I've been called a colonizer by people in the black community, by black people. Yeah, I get it. I get your perception, and I'm not going to argue with you, because my ancestry would tend to agree. I have said insensitive things and gotten harsh lessons from people, and learned from it, and tried to be better, and basically told to fuck myself with my apology. But it doesn't mean that I'm like, oh, okay, well then fuck you, because no, like, I did something that hurt your feelings. You pointed it out, and, you know, I'm learning from it, but that doesn't mean that I'm owed forgiveness by you. That doesn't mean that I'm even owed an opportunity to apologize to you for it, right? Being an ally and, like, trying to expand your worldview and, like, be a better person and more care for the plight of others and understand that plight isn't about getting a pat on the head and oh, look at you, you're such a good ally. And you see it a lot when, like, I have found my way onto Black TikTok. I understand that maybe I don't really belong there, but I sit down, shut up, and listen. I do generally comment, like, the little sparkly heart emoji, because it's, like, my favorite emoji, on posts where, you know, black people are talking about their experience in the world and kind of giving the free education for the engagement. But I do not try to, like, oh yeah, I totally agree with you, because I want people in that comment section to see me say it and be like, oh, you're a good white person. No, I still benefit from the system that oppresses them. And I understand that. I'm not here so they can pat me on the head and go, oh, that's so nice that you're listening to me. I'm here because I want to understand something that I cannot innately understand. I have to be educated on it. And I do seek sources of education that don't come from me asking somebody to do emotional labor, but from consuming emotional labor that's already been put out there by somebody who, you know, offered it up, right? And again, I'm not saying this so I can be like, look how great I am and you should all be like me. No, I fuck up all the fucking time. You know, I'm not perfect by any stretch. And I don't call myself an ally, because I feel like that's, like, if you're not aware, if you are a hearing person, I don't think you're supposed to give yourself a name sign. I think name signs are, like, unique to the deaf and hard of hearing community, and therefore, like, they have to be the one to give you a name sign. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing with being an ally, is like, being an ally is something you do. It's not a title you have, and you don't get to call yourself an ally. People in the marginalized community that you're trying to stand with and elevate can say that, you know, you're being an ally right now or whatever. But I think walking around calling yourself an ally, it's being a cookie ally. You want somebody to give you a cookie and a pat on the head and tell you what a good person you are. And that's not what it's about. And if that's why you're doing it, I think you need to, like, dig a little deeper and understand that systems that abuse and oppress anybody can innately be turned to abuse and oppress you. And you should care for the sake of caring. But if you can't do that, care because it could one day be you. But generally, I want the world to be sunshine, puppy dogs, and rainbows for everybody. I want everybody to have an equal opportunity. I want anybody who applies for a business loan at a bank to be evaluated based on their, them doing the legwork for, doing their market research and everything else and putting together their plan. Not, well, we got a white guy and a black guy applying, we're going to give it to the white guy, right? But I also want everybody to have access to the tools to build an effective plan. Because even if you start at the level of, okay, the bank will not evaluate based on race, right? They're going to blind pick. You still inherently have a person that comes from a family that comes from a higher socioeconomic level and has more access to tools and education to know what they need to put together in a business plan, to have the time to go research it, to, have the time to put in this labor, as opposed to somebody who comes from generational poverty and lives in a socioeconomically depressed area. Therefore, their schools probably suck and they didn't get the same education. They didn't get near the same quality education. They don't even know what tools they need to even try to go looking for them. And they work multiple jobs. So when are they finding time to put in this labor to build this business proposal, right? It's not just about, oh, well, we're an equal opportunity lender. We don't take race into account when we decide who to lend to. It's about advantages that led to the white candidate at that level looking better, because they come from a system that benefits them and the other person applying is coming from a system that is actively trying to hold them down. You should care about that. You should just want the world to be good for everybody. So that's why equality really isn't the solution that it sounds like in a vacuum. Like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Everybody's treated equally. Because not everybody comes from equal resources. And so by treating everybody at that end judgment stage equally, you're still oppressing people who don't come from the same kind of background. Anyway, yep. See, this keeps devolving into me ranting about things that are only tangentially connected to magic and just the world in general. Like, on one hand, I really wish I could go back to me like a decade ago that was pretty ignorant of the world and lived in my own little bubble of indifference. It was certainly a quieter existence, but I don't know. I appreciate that I more understand these things now, and I just really wish I had an answer to it. And I think that's the struggle, is I don't know how to fix it. But anyway, I'm going to log off before this gets too melancholy. As always, if y'all made it with me this far, especially on a day like today, it's not been a great one. Thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll talk to y'all again next week.